Sorry, guys. We had a couple little technical issues to begin with. Today is TCS Podcast episode 11. We are excited to bring you three amazing, very interesting perspectives on managing managers. Well, I'm Holly Moore with the cleaning software. We are here to empower and educate the residential cleaning industry. We do have a CRM that manages residential cleaning services. And if you have any questions about that, feel free to book us a demo. But today's purpose today is to educate and empower cleaning services. And the question that I get the most, because I also own a cleaning service. Katelyn Langley is actually my CEO, and it is managing managers. How do you get them to buy in? Because we all go, I've actually noticed it a lot here lately. Everyone's attending these big workshops or retreats or all these things, and then you have all of these ideas, and then you have to come home to your management team, or to maybe you don't even have a management team. Maybe you need to create one. And you bring home these ideas, and how do you get them done? How do you find a manager? How do you motivate the manager? How do you get the manager's buy-in to be able to make your crazy vision that you learned somewhere come true and that you want to get it implemented? So that is what this 2-week educational session is all about for TCS. We have this amazing podcast that's kicking us off. And then we'll have 2 free webinars for you to attend. I kind of broke it down into 2 sections. The first webinar is this Thursday on May 22nd at 12 p.m. And it will be over how to find the managers, how to get their buy-in, and how to motivate them. The second one, a week later, on May 29th, is going to be more of, okay, we have an idea. Now, how do we get it to these managers? How do we actually implement it? How do we incentivize them? And how do we sit back and watch others grow our cleaning service? So without further ado, I have to introduce these ladies. First, I'm going to introduce my amazing friend that I've networked with for years, Nicole Hubbard with Hubbard's Maid service in Savannah, Georgia. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I can bring my Southern accent on.
Yes.
Oh gosh.
The unique perspective of Nicole is that she runs all solos. She's actually one of the largest cleaning services in her area. Before it was all more traditional, smaller companies. So she's got a lot of insight on that, as well as a lot of her managers are VAs. Which is different than the rest of us. So I'm looking forward to giving you getting a bunch of knowledge on how to do this from a VA perspective. And then so without further ado, go ahead and introduce yourself, Nicole, and then basically what has brought you to this podcast, and how many cleaners do you actually have? What has your journey been as far as managing multiple teams or multiple managers across your location?
All right. Well, thank you so much, Holly, for having me on. I'm excited to be here with everyone, and I'm really interested in these topics myself, and I want to hear what everybody else has to say. Being here in Savannah, Georgia, it has been kind of groundbreaking because we are the largest residential cleaning business in our area, and it's a first. And I feel like our staff and our team are excited about that as well, because they understand that they are pioneers in the cleaning industry, because the residential maid service is kind of like new territory. It's a new frontier, and people are just getting started in it and becoming bigger and bolder and more successful. And I know that commercial cleaning companies have had huge worldwide success, and I think now it's the residential side of the business. It's our turn, so I'm really excited about that. And I think we have, like, right now we have 25 cleaners, 26 cleaners. We were actually down to 23 cleaners here just within the last, I'd say, just 2 months. We went from 36 cleaners to 23 cleaners. We had a very difficult time. We had what I would call a mini coup, and I know we were talking about it earlier before we went on the air, but we lost 45 recurring clients in a matter of weeks. And it was really shocking to the team. It really made them they were defeated, and they were really, really worried. And I've been worried for quite some time, but we are already coming out of it and fighting our way through. And we can talk about that as well. But as far as the VAs go, more than half of our staff is VAs. Now, Holly had said that we had VA managers. We don't have VA managers. We just have VAs, but we don't even call them VAs. We call them remote workers, because I feel like VA is the wrong term, because these people are viable. They're just as important and vital to our company as our in-person people. And even though they are not managers per se, they are our company could not run without them. And so how we have been able to keep them connected and part of the team is, I think, first of all, defining the term that we use. And I think remote worker is better than a VA term. So we've changed the terminology, and then the way that we all stay connected with our remote workers, and they're all Filipino, they're in the Philippines, is I myself, even with being really, really busy, I make sure to reach out to them at least once a week and just say, hey, how are you doing? And it's not like I reach out to them and say, oh, can you get this done for me? Or, oh, what's going on with this project? I just reach out to them once a week, and I'm like, hey, how's it going? How are your kids doing? What'd you do for fun this weekend? And then we have it's a rule in our company that our in-house people, they need to reach out to each one of the VAs 3 times a week at least, and it shouldn't be work related. It should be social.
Right. I love that perspective. I love calling them remote workers, because it does make sense if you truly want to treat everybody equally, because that's all everybody wants is fairness and equality. It makes sense to call them that versus the VA term. So that's awesome. Thank you. I'm going to introduce, I have tons of questions for you ladies, so hold on.
Okay.
Next introduction is Kory Beaver. She's actually a TCS customer, and I've admired her from the day I had my first demo. I was like, this chick gets it. So I share a little bit about your journey, where you came forward before you were actually a cleaning service owner, because you're actually the second owner of Constant Clean, which I think makes you super unique, because you are not only, you came in as second owner and you had managers that have been there 10 years or more. And so she had to come in not only with not her managers, but then manage her managers. And then I've just admired her going through the process of changing an entire CRM, and they were on a really, really old one. So, in a lot of tenured employees. So I totally admired watching you go through that. And I was like, you're definitely going to be on this episode of managing managers and creating processes for them to help get bridge the gaps. So go ahead and introduce yourself. Let me know your history and where you came from, and then how many actual admins you have running your cleaning service.
Okay, thanks, Holly. I'm excited to be on here. So I am the owner of Constant Clean Maid Service. We are in Northwest Indiana and serve the Chicagoland area as well. I recently purchased the company 4 years ago in August. I came from working at the steel mills. So I worked as a manager in the steel mills for 10 years. And then I had this unique opportunity to buy a cleaning service. It wasn't something in my plans. I wanted to retire from the steel mill. I loved my team. Again, I was a manager there, so I loved my team. I loved my managers. So it was something I was kind of completely caught off guard with, but took the leap of faith and took the risk. And it's been very rewarding. So we have about, on any given day, 25 to 35 employees. We do teams. We also do solos. We also do residential and commercial cleaning. So about 30 to 40% of our business is commercial cleaning. That's done during the day, weekends, and nights. What else do you want to know right now?
I think you did great. I think it's great. Yes, I forgot to mention the unique perspective to Kory is she does teams and solos and the commercials. So that's an interesting aspect that a lot of...
We do have 2 locations.
Oh yeah.
So we have 2 separate locations. So I have a manager and then I have a quality supervisor / trainer at each location. And that those team members were with the previous owner. So they had to go through a change of adjusting to me coming in. And then obviously I made another big change with them at the end of last year that we'll go and talk a little bit more on.
Okay, the next is Katelyn Langley. She is CEO of Maids and More. I'm sure she'll fill you in on how massive she has grown this, but I think what her unique perspective to this podcast and the reason why she is here is because she is a CEO, not necessarily an owner speaking, but a CEO. And then on top of that, how is CEOs managing managers? And you're not, not the owner. So it's even a step above managing managers. It's like managing managers, manage managers. So she is expert at it. I get to see it daily. It's amazing. So she does run teams. She has multiple locations, one in Austin, one in Houston, and even a corporate structure. So we can't wait to hear from you. Go ahead.
Yes. So I'm Katelyn with Maids and More. And that's actually exactly what I do is I manage managers who manage managers. But starting from the beginning, so I did not start off as CEO at all, in fact. So I actually came to Holly in December of 2014. And I was kind of looking for a new direction, looking for something different. And I pitched to her the idea of opening a Maids and More branch in my hometown in Conroe, Texas. And after extensive research and a market study and a really, really intense interview, she finally agreed to it. And so we launched Maids and More in Conroe, Texas in February of 2015. And so I was like, okay, I'm ready to go. I'm going to be the next Austin Maids and More. I had one customer and it was my grandma. I had a set of supplies. I was like, I got this. And it was like, holy cow, this is a lot harder than I thought it would be. So really it was like a year and a half of trial and error. And I felt like I would take, one step forward and 2 steps back. But I kept pushing. And obviously I had a really amazing coach and mentor in Holly. And so I think that's seriously, and I push through. So anyway, fast forward, by 2019, I had grown Maids and More Conroe to 28 full-time cleaners, and we had 2 full-time office staff. COVID happened and the craziness, and in 2021, we kind of pivoted and went in a few different directions, and it actually ended up being our biggest growth year yet. Thank goodness for being essential. And so everything was rocking. It was great in Conroe. And in 2022, I found a great replacement for myself. And so I went from the GM of Conroe to the COO of Maids and More. So I was in charge of the day-to-day operations of now not only Conroe, but also of Austin. And so when I stepped into that position, there was about 80 full-time cleaners in Austin and 5 office staff. So combined with mine, it was a lot. And that was like a whole new level of chaos unlocked. And that was also a learning experience. And that's really where I learned how to effectively manage managers, I would say. So with the team, we came up with processes and goals and strategies and implemented them. And same thing. I mean, we got that thing rocking as well. So in that, what did we hit that year? I don't remember. But anyway, we kept growing.
All a blur.
It's all a blur. It was crazy. But really what I did is kind of got the right people in the right places. And there were some shifts that needed to be made. There were some changes. There were some things that needed to be kind of, restructured, rebuilt. And we got a really great leadership team in place. And at that time, it was like, okay, what's the next challenge, right? Because we're all about big goals. And we were hitting them every year. So Roxy, who started out as a cleaner in Austin 14 years ago, had been the GM of Austin for years. And so she was the perfect replacement for COO. So hired Roxy as the replacement, and then I stepped into the role of CEO. And so that, there came our corporate structure. And so then, or now, that is my current role. And so my focus is really supporting our leadership team, setting and executing all of our corporate goals. So everything from, growth and financial and profitability, and also while maintaining our unique culture, which I would say is pretty unique. We are truly a family. From day one, everybody is brought in and made a part of our Maids and More family. And it's awesome. I think that has helped a lot in getting us to where we are at this point. So thanks
My
to the
husband
SWAT
calls
team.
us the Suicide Squad.
Yeah, we're
But
so
it's better than
different.
being called a cult, so I'm okay with it.
It is so true. We realized that this past weekend at our retreat. We are like the most diverse, eclectic group of people ever, but it works. Whatever we've got, it works. So anyway, we grew by 17% in 2024, and we hit 8.6 million. So we're super, super proud. And I don't think that has anything to do with me. That's truly all about our team. It's about having the right people in the right places. And it's about, the leadership of the management teams. That's how we got there.
All right. Well, I know everybody watching us online is like, okay, that's enough. I want to know how you did it. How did you do it? And I think the very first question, and I'll ask each one of you to answer this one, and or just everybody chime in how they want. But how do you find it? Like, maybe I'm a person when I've got, I feel like when you have 10 cleaners or 10 to 15, it feels like that's the point where an owner wants to step out, hire a manager to manage everybody, maybe even 7, and depending on your profit margins. I think when your profit margins can handle it and you're ready to get some freedom and you're ready to release some of your income so that you can step away is the right time. So it's all dependent upon that. But how did you go about finding them? Because I hear that complaint a lot. Like, I just can't find the right one. I've been through 30. So please share your information on where you go to get your admin managers or anything that's worked for you in the past. Nicole, do you want to go first?
Okay. Um, I've used Hire Lead Chill for office staff, and I've found them to be very,
Sean
very effective.
Day!
Yes,
Shout
yes,
out
yes.
to Sean Day. He shared our podcast.
Oh, awesome. Yes. So I've found them to be very helpful and effective in finding office staff. And, I don't think it gets any easier, but I think a lot of times the more the higher level person that you need, I think it's harder to find, but it can be done. It's doable, and it's something that we've always struggled with. Something that's just really top of mind that I've recently learned is don't have a vacuum. And one of the big mistakes I've made recently with the problem that I had was I ascribed to my training managers more leadership qualities than they actually indeed had. And we had a great service manager over our ladies, and she left at the end of November. And I have found finding that service manager that is in charge of the ladies and running that is a very unique niche position, and it's very, very difficult to find. And so while I was very much looking for that individual, frantically trying to hire for that person during the 3-month time, that lack of leadership, because I thought, oh, it's okay, we'll get by. But I think during that 3-month vacuum, not having the correct leadership in place was a catalyst for one of the problems that we had. So I'm saying all this to say is don't skimp on leadership. Always be looking for that next person, because you never know. And I will never ever do that again. I'll figure something out. But the bigger you get, you really, really need to have that one person that is directly in charge of the ladies, to hold them accountable, to coach them, and just to be that lighthouse in the storm, because times are crazy and people are looking for somebody that they can trust, that they can rely on, that they feel good about, that they can come to them for their problems. And you give somebody 3 months in a vacuum, and I think you're really going to start having things break down. So that's a lesson learned. I don't know if that's helpful or not, but
No, it definitely is. And I was just sitting here thinking, I was like, Katelyn, where's the first place you go? Because I know where you go. And I think this is a place where we all forget about, because I think that people, okay, I've noticed in some of the larger companies that I network with, it's like, oh, we got to go out and find these people who have degrees that have never had anything to do with cleaning, and they have all this management experience. But I think in our industry, it's most important to find the people who actually understand the industry and how to clean and have done it themselves. And then you can teach them the management skills. To me, I feel like that's easier than finding somebody from the outside that comes in. So Katelyn, tell them about all of our managers. I think, where did they all come from?
Yeah, so not all of them, but a lot of our management team started out as cleaners. And I mean, even our Roxy, who's now COO of Maids and More, started out as a cleaner. Now, she did have some management experience. It was mostly like restaurant management, but she came to Maids and More with the only intention of being a cleaner. Like, great, I can kind of easy hours, and, it's flexible, and I don't have to worry about anything. And then Holly roped her into trying out the GM position, and she was absolutely amazing, like crazy amazing. So I think it's about seeing the potential in people. And a lot of people, myself included, when I came to Holly at 21, I didn't have, much leadership like experience. I wasn't a great leader. I mean, I think it's like finding that right person. Obviously, they have to be a higher level thinker, a little bit of a D personality, I would say, some natural leadership, a little bit of an I, like kind of influential. People would follow them. But it's, it can be anyone. So, yes, several of our managers, in fact, all of our QC managers started out as cleaners. Half of our management staff, like our GM, was a cleaner. Our Austin GM was never a cleaner, but she did have previous hotel management and cleaning experience. But over half of our office staff started out as cleaners. And so we always look from within. And
I think it's only 3.
Well, sales team,
no, I didn't count sales.
Yeah, you got to think of corporate. But over half of our entire 17 managers were cleaners at one point for us. So that is always the first place that we start. And we've tried both. We really have. We've tried to hire from Indeed. We've made multiple hires over the years from Indeed. And it's hard because they don't truly understand our culture. They're not bought in. They don't have, if they do have cleaning experience, it's not the same. It's not our cleaning experience, because everybody's, I think, is pretty unique, their training and their processes. And yeah, I mean, that's where we start. And sometimes it's the people you would least expect. Sometimes it's the quiet ones like Roxy. And it's hard unless you really know your cleaners and get to know your people. I mean, it's the first place that we always start.
Somebody somebody just shot out Roxy. So Kory, I find your situation, thank you, Katelyn. I find your situation very interesting because you came in to managers that were already in place by the previous owner. Have you ever had to replace them, or have you been able to maintain the same staff? So acquisition may be a weird way of getting a manager, but it looks like you may have done that.
So when I came in, we had our manager, and our QC manager was already in place at Munster. In our Crown Point location, we actually only had one manager. So we did promote from within. And I kind of, to piggyback on what you guys have been saying, I think looking at your cleaners is the best bet, as far as one, like knowing their culture. Obviously, they already know your expectations that you have. They already know the systems, what's kind of in place. But also, just like Katelyn said, sometimes it's the quiet ones, and you have to recognize, as either a manager or an owner, the personalities that people have and their style that they have. Because sometimes it's when you give that person the position, or talk to them about it, it kind of sparks a fire under them and like, oh, wow, you think that I could do that position? And that's what I kind of think we had. And one of our locations, it was like we reached out because we were going to post something and we let the staff know and nobody approached us. But then it's like when we approached the individual, she was kind of a little like surprised, like, you think I could do that position? And I'm like, absolutely, you could do it. You know, you've been working with us for a few years as a cleaner, so you already know our system, you know our expectations, you know our personalities, what we're looking for. And she's thriving in that position now. So it was nice to come in and have a management staff kind of already in place. But from previous experience at my old jobs that I've worked at, looking from within, I think is the best bet, in my opinion. Not to say that you can't hire somebody from the outside. I think depending on the position that you're hiring for as well, when you search on the outside and bring that person in, I think sometimes it can be a bad message to your staff, like, oh, they didn't think I was good enough. And I've been here for 5 years. So she brought somebody in over me, you know, that has no experience or, you know, came from a different industry. So I would really encourage people to really look and not just put it out there. And if nobody says anything, I think if you see potential in somebody, making sure you go and reach out to them and talk with them, because it can be a pretty big success. And then next, just real quick, that I wanted to say is obviously networking. My personal opinion, networking is huge. That's kind of how I got into buying this business, actually, is somebody that I used to manage way back when I was a GM for Dairy Queen. I managed him, and it was his dad's business that he was selling. And so I hadn't talked to him in about 15 years, and he randomly sent me a message through LinkedIn and was like, hey, you know, my dad's selling his business. Is it something you're interested in? So I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't heard from you since college. So we chatted, and and I kind of asked him, like, why'd you reach out to me? You know, like, it's been 15 years or so that we've, you know, talked. And he was like, because I remember you as my manager at Dairy Queen, and the qualities that you had there, you came to mind. And I was just like, wow, I never thought, 15, 20 years ago, I was making an impression on, high schoolers of like my management style. So that was really cool. And I think networking is always huge for us in this industry, and just talking to certain people. And if they have qualities, they could be somebody that you could bring on board. And then it's figuring out within the budget how to bring them on board if you want to be able to grow and become bigger.
Absolutely. That's definitely how I met our marketing manager. I never thought I'd have one because I was like, oh yeah, I can't afford that. But eventually I was like, you know what, maybe we need to make a spot, because I really feel like I need this position. And networking the same way. That's definitely a big one. So I have a question online. It says, what does it look from your leadership development pipeline? Like, how do you take people from a cleaner to a leader? And I think that kind of almost gets into our next question of buy-in. How do you get them to buy? Obviously, they're bought in as a cleaner, but even if it was somebody you networked with, or or even a remote worker, look at me go, Nicole. Even a remote worker, how do you gain that buy-in from them? And then how do you get them from, to be a leader, whether it be from a cleaner, Katelyn's perspective, from a remote worker for Nicole's perspective, and then maybe even a really big veteran that's already been there a long time. Kory, how do you get their buy-in? So Katelyn, I will let you go first. How do you get the buy-in once they get there? What do you say to them that makes them go through all the trauma that it is from being just a simple cleaner, just going out every day, cleaning your own, to, hey, you want all this more responsibility. What's your sales pitch?
So what comes to mind is Gloria, really, right? She was the best cleaner we had. And I somehow convinced her to be a QC manager. And then she was the best QC manager, and she ended up being Conroe GM. She is Conroe GM to this day, has been for years. So it's about seeing the potential, and it's the same situation. We put a job post out. She's not the kind of person who would have ever applied for the job. I had to pull her in and have a conversation with her and explain to her you would be great. You should just try it. And I think it's really about being a coach, being a mentor, and like reinforcing that and, affirming that they are better, they have value. And I remember, I'll never forget this. One time, Gloria said years back, talking about this exact like evolution, she said, Holly believed in me before I believed in myself. And I think Holly put that in her presentation for a regional event one time. And I was like, oh my God, like that's the leadership, that I aspire to. And that's really what it's about. I mean, truly, there's no other secret. We told her, she knew she was great, right? It's constant feedback. You have to give your team constant positive feedback along with the negative. Same for, the cleaners, the QC, the management, upper leadership. It's all the same. But we really just convinced her and that she was good enough for the position. And she absolutely was, whether she felt like it or not. And then through that position, it was just about coaching and mentoring and guiding and helping her and setting goals with her, helping her achieve those goals. And I mean, that's really what it is. Like the potential is there. I think maybe we foster it and we help it grow. But she had these crazy leadership qualities and just needed to kind of, like hone in on a few skills. And some people, I mean, everybody's different. I know y'all have touched on that, but everybody's personality is so different. I think that's one thing that you have to realize. And it's managing each person is totally different. Some people are a little bit more rough around the edges and they have that strong D type personality. The leadership is there, but maybe we need to work on our delivery. Some people are meek and mild and have all of the right ideas and know exactly what to do and are overly polite, like overly sensitive, but we need to pull out that drive, that like they just need to be a little bit more confident. They need to be a little bit more firm. They need to not be afraid to have those difficult conversations. And so I think it's about getting to know each person's unique personality and how to best coach and mentor them to be the best, leader they can be.
I love what you said, because all of everything you said coaching, empowering. I heard coaching, I heard empowering, I heard their own ideas. That's buy-in. Now, manipulation and leadership comes into that skill, and I'll go
I hate it
deeper
when you use that word.
I know it's not manipulation, but it is empowering others. And I see a lot of, as cleaning service owners, we're very OCD and we're very helicopter parents and very helicopter business owners. So like trusting them to do it is what they need, because they know that you're depending on them. And when you empower them in that manner, they feel the pressure, they have the buy-in, they know they got to do it. If they know you're just going to like come across them and micromanage them all day, they're out. I mean, it's like done. So the empowerment. And Nicole, I'm going to switch up to you. Okay. So as a VA, like, Katelyn's there, she can touch Gloria, or sorry, not VA, remote worker. I'm going to get better at that. Remote worker, how on in that aspect of getting buy-in from remote workers and with your current management staff, how have you developed that pipeline as far as going up to bringing them in as management and teaching them how to be leaders?
Well, with the buy-in, I think the most important buy-in is you have to you first have to buy into yourself, because you are the lifeblood and the soul of your company, and everything flows from out of that. So you got to have the buy-in for yourself. And I know that maybe sounds kind of just fluffy and it's not very technical, but it's absolutely the most critical step you have to take before you do anything else. And once you have bought into yourself, then from there you can move out. You can move out and you can manage people. So when you buy into yourself, you're naturally going to filter out for them. I mean, within reason, you're going to filter out the wrong people, and you're going to attract and bring in the right people. The wrong people will be repelled. The right people will be attracted, and so that's almost kind of like a natural, organic thing. And then from there, the buy-in is going to be the trust. And trust is earned and it takes some time. But if you are consistent, if you are communicating with them, when you said you're going to communicate with them, when you're replying to their emails or their messages or their text messages right away and you're not blowing them off, that's another layer of trust. And that's another way to get buy-in. I think just anytime you can be, just lavish them with, and what I mean by lavish, I don't mean spoil, but just delight them. When you can send them a little card, when you can just mail them, or not mail them, but you can do like a quick video and say, hey, I just want to tell you, thank you so much for the job you did the other day when you were able to calm down that client. Ever since you've come on board, you have just been doing such a great job, and everything, the energy is better in the company now. Just doing all those little touches, and they don't have to be expensive, but just extravagant and truthful. I think that builds trust and that builds buy-in. And one of the things that I've been doing here recently is I have been really drilling down, and I kind of circle back to my problem that I've had recently. But it's been a catalyst in a good way for me to do things differently. And one of the things that I've wanted to change, because I know it is going to even add an extra layer of buy-in, is really drill down on your vision. What is your vision statement for your company? And project that to your team. And honestly, my business manager and we had created a vision statement. But then this has been about maybe I'd say about 5 months ago, but we've never shared it with the team. How stupid is that? How silly is that? And we spent so much time on it. And now I'm like, we have got to get this out to our team. We have got to share our vision with our team so they can have that buy-in. But I'm glad we held off, because it took this moment in time for me to realize that I read our vision statement and I was like, you know what? This just isn't quite true. This just isn't quite who we are. And so actually, I just messaged my manager about it. And I'm asking her, I'm like, can we tweak this? Can we change this? She's the one that came up with the vision statement. And she is the business manager of our company. And that's another way of having that buy-in is you've got to have them in those really deep moments, in those processes, and that they contribute to it and that they own it and they have ownership in it.
That is actually awesome. Yeah, nobody's going to follow a goal if they don't have some part of way of creating it. If you don't see there is a problem, get them to see that, hey, we really need to improve in this area, and they must agree to that. Because if the person's like, yeah, we don't got a problem with complaints, and then you're trying to fix the complaint problem and they don't even see it, you have to go back. So one, making them see the problem. Two, making them come up with solutions and it be their ideas, their vision. Now you're empowering. And that's pretty awesome. So I can't wait to hear from Kory. I was like, how do you walk into managers who've been there for 10 years and you're in as a new owner, and tell me about the buy-in and that perspective? I can't wait to hear. Thank you, Nicole.
So I think it's really piggybacking, obviously, off of what Nicole and Katelyn, you guys have already said. The number one thing that I remember, and hopefully my managers remember when I came in, is that I'm going to back you. I told them, like, we need to figure out each other's management styles. We're going to need to figure out each other's personalities. And that's going to come in time. But one of my biggest things is I want my managers and my employees to trust me, and I want to be able to trust them, right? That's what everybody wants. But we need to make sure that we show that. So I told them from the very beginning that I am here to support you. Now, after a decision is made, it may not be the decision that I would have made, and it may not be a decision that I necessarily like for the company, but I'm going to make sure that I am there to support you. And then I'll let you know, hey, next time, maybe do it this way, or this is my vision, or this is how I see something. Whether that be with employees, if they're firing somebody or they brought somebody on board and then I'm looking and I'm like, maybe I wouldn't have done that. I'm not just going to go and say, nope, you're fired because I wouldn't have hired you, and it's going to be a complete disaster. I'm going to make sure that I'm there to support them, but then also kind of guide them of my vision, how I would have done something differently. And that goes really to all aspects. Price, sometimes I look at a price and I'm like, where'd you come up with that? Why did you give that person the price? But I'm not going to go behind their back and go to the customer and say, you know what? No, it actually needs to be higher. She gave you the wrong price. I'm going to support it, but then I kind of make sure that I'm talking with my management team of how did you come up with this? Making sure I kind of see their aspect of it and their side of it, because they could be seeing something totally different that I'm missing. So I do remember telling them that up front, is that I'm here to support you. Even if it's not a decision that I personally would make, I'm going to let you know that, but I'm still going to support that decision. So trust is huge. I think my next number one thing is communication. I talk about this, weekly in all of our meetings and stuff, is communication. We've got to communicate. If we can't communicate, everything else is failing. So that's one way of buy-in. And then also, I think the question had to do with bringing people up the pipeline and promoting them, communicating with that person. If you see that a cleaner has the potential, you've got to communicate that, because I know more often than not, people are not feeling valued, or they don't think they have the potential when, as a management team, we're thinking, oh yeah, this person could be the next QC person. But if you're never communicating that with them, meeting with them regularly, letting them know that you see the potential in them, it's not going to happen. And they may leave and say, oh, I feel more valued somewhere else. So getting buy-in has to do with trust, communication. And I think the last thing I want to touch on for buy-in is really knowing their management style and your own management style. I mean, I did the Myers-Briggs questionnaire years ago in my when I worked at the steel mill. And I know that was really helpful to know my management style and how to deal with others. And that helps with the buy-in process. If you know you're dealing with somebody that is obviously opposite, you can adjust your approach to them differently, which we need to do with anybody that we're talking to, is making sure we're adjusting our management style to them. And that's how we're going to help get their buy-in. And then one more thing, sorry, I'm going to add on to.
No, you're good. I'm loving it. All of it.
Getting their feedback is super important. I know from dealing with managers in the past, sometimes it's more of this is what we need. This is what we want to see. These are the goals that you need to meet. And then you're never really hearing back from them as far as, well, this is what I'm struggling with, and this is why I don't think I'm going to be able to meet that goal. So getting their feedback, and also really blatantly asking them, especially bringing somebody up through the pipeline, what's your hesitation? What's your reservation, so that you kind of know what they're nervous about, worried about, and you can help offset that and make sure you're there to support that.
That's awesome. There was two things that you really stood out to me in that whole conversation that you just had. When you said, let them make the decision, even when you know it's wrong. Sometimes the hardest part about managing managers is to let them make the mistakes, even though you see them coming. But it's very important that let them make the wrong decisions, because the first step is making a decision.
Yeah.
I see a lot of cleaning service owners have a lot of managers, but they're coming to them 90 times a day. And I'm like, why do you have her? Why do you have that manager? If you have to answer everything anyway, couldn't you just do it yourself? And let go. Let them make a decision. They're going to make 10 wrong ones. And guess what you did when you first started? 10 times more than that. Yeah. So that was super cool. I love that you said that. And I love the personality test. We personally do that in ours. Before we hire them, we make them give us our personality test, because if we're hiring them for like a sales position, you don't want, like the quiet C, or we use DISC or whatever.
Yeah.
We have like our certain things down, and then you're like, oh yeah, that's not going to be, she's more operations type of personality. Or yeah, she's more sales, or maybe she could be both. And then like if it would fit. So I love that you mentioned that too. So as there some key takeaways there. So I knew this podcast was going to be really hard. That's why I did like 2 webinars and all this stuff, because I'm like, we have just touched on the surface, just touched on the very, very like 2 questions. And so I have one more question, and then we'll wrap it up because I know that you guys probably have work to do. But so we got to the vision. We talked about how you get them. We talked about creating the buy-in. Now we're kind of to like process and implementation and like kind of measurements of like, how do you measure that? So say I come home from a conference and I have decided we're switching CRMs, because that one's easy, right? Switching CRMs. And I've got to convince my entire crew, all of my management staff, they already bought in, they're already motivated, they know it's their job, they're ready to make the decisions, they're ready to implement it. Like Kory, I know I've seen you personally go through this, and I admired every. Oh, it was that bad. It was like, never again.
That's how bad it was. Yeah.
That's how bad it was. To go through the process or whatever. So I watched her do it with her managers. They were so polite. She was actually very sensitive to like their being reluctant.
I was like, okay, first of all, I'm just like, what? When she said, I didn't expect that. When she said she came in and she let them do it the way they were going to do it. So she didn't come in and say, hey, this is how we're going to do it now. She truly just let them go on about managing how they were managing, quoting how they were quoting, doing everything that they would originally do, and then coach them and maybe advise them differently or showed them a better way. I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. I've never known anybody to like acquire a company and then like let them do what they're doing. That's crazy.
Most people try to come in like a
Yeah.
holy helicopter mom. You're going to do this. Here's your process changes.
Yeah,
Here's
like here's
your
a
new sheet of
restructure.
SOPs
Yeah,
that you must
I
follow because
know.
I say so.
That was amazing.
Yeah. So how did you, Kory, before you dove off the mountain and tried to get away from that question, how did you, like, I know when you switched CRMs, it was like the process that you had to go through, the implementation. How do you measure their success? What incentive did you give them to do that? Like, because nobody wants to do that. That's not fun. We were operating just as fine the way we were. Why?
Yes, which was big because the old system that we had, obviously they knew in and out. They knew how to do everything. I was the new person, like, oh, how do I create a customer? How do I do this? So I had no idea, and they had done it for so long that they were doing it like the back of their hand. There were some things that they were like, oh, we can't do this in here, or this is our workaround for it. And so it was like, okay, maybe we can look into getting something different. The biggest thing is we had like the ancient system where if one person logged on, nobody else could log on, or you could only have like 2 users at a time, because then it would kick somebody else off. So me personally, I could never get on the system and look at anything unless I kicked somebody off. So it was very difficult for me. I was obviously then going in like after hours and on weekends, because it was like, okay, let me try to do some work, look at some numbers, look at scheduling, look at anything I couldn't do. So really I approached my team like, I need to have some access. I need to be able to get in. I don't want to hinder your guys' day just from me looking around on the system, or having the ability to look on the system when you guys need to be using it for scheduling and everything. So it's really, I approach them like, I'm going to start looking for a new system. These are the reasons why I'm looking for a new system. Not that our system wasn't capable or wasn't doing what we needed it to do, because we did have one. It was working. They loved it. So then researching some different systems, I found some really cool capabilities. Like there's an app that everybody can use and they can look at the phone themselves and see what route they have, and previously we were doing everything by paper and they would come in and we would hand them a piece of paper or a stack of paper with all of their routes. So finding the benefits that I thought they would also think are really cool, helped that buy-in and helped that transition, because it was like, look at what this system can do that there's no capability whatsoever with our old system. They knew really the way also I presented it was, we are going to be getting a new system. It wasn't like oh, well, maybe we should do this. Maybe we should keep the old one. It was really, I was straight and narrow with them. Like, we are getting a new system, but we need to make sure that we find the right system. So making sure they kind of knew the capabilities and the different features that the new system had that I knew that they would get excited about too, was helpful. And then obviously being there and supporting them through the transition, which we're still obviously going through. It's only been a few months. So there's going to be things that they revert back to, oh, in the old system, we could have done this. So then it's my job, my responsibility to relate it back to how we can do it in the new system that's similar to the old system. So for example, like right now, we're working on a new way of billing our commercial clients. And so the workaround in the new system that I'm figuring out, I've just relayed back and said, in the old system, how they used to have a list of all the clients on the 29th of the month, this is how I'm going to do it in the new system. And it's going to be a list of all the clients that you need to invoice, and it's going to be underneath your name. So I'm trying to correlate it back. It's not exactly the same, obviously, of how we used to do it in the old system, but trying to make any sort of correlation back to what they're used to kind of highlight, this is the same thing, it's just different in a different system.
That's awesome. I've personally watched it. She's been so tough and hung in there, and I think that's like you creating the gap, like listening and figuring it out is what they need in a certain, like, if you want your vision, like if you want something to change, it's not going to be easy. It's gonna suck. So you have to like be willing to embrace in the suck with them.
Yeah.
Like, I'm here. We'll get through the 3 months and you'll be like, oh my gosh, do you remember when we used to have paperwork orders?
Yeah.
Or we used to fill this silly form out or something like that.
And sometimes, they'll still make comments, well, in the old system, I could do it this way, or this is what I liked. And sometimes I just flat out say, like, we're not going back. So, I'm sorry. We're not going back to the old system. We'll figure it out. What's the workaround? What are you having the problem with? Why did you like it like that in the old system? Because sometimes to me, I'm thinking, even in the old system, I'm like, I think that's silly how we were doing it. But nobody likes change. Yeah. They were comfortable with what they were doing. They knew it like the back of their hand. And so they revert back to what they're familiar with, but kind of getting them to pull out, like, why did you like it that way, to see? Because sometimes they may even just say, oh, I don't know, it was just easy, like it's what I knew. Okay, I can understand that. But they may have a legitimate reason of like, I really like this feature because, and I want to try to pull that out of them to see, how can I relate that? How could we do it into the new system? If there's a possible way to do that. So again, listening to them, being knee deep with them, and asking them questions to see it from their perspective, so that you can be the problem solver. Because in certain situations, we're not going to go back. So as much as somebody complains about it or wants it the old way, nobody likes change, and we need to make sure that we're moving forward.
I think this is funny. And then Nicole, I'm going to get to your implementation and success process. Me and Katelyn, I'm going to lead you into the answer I want you to give me. We were actually just talking about this not too long ago. It was like, okay, let's get this implemented. And then you start to hit all those barriers. You've got two choices, but one of them is never going back to where you started. Because if you go back to where you started, you admitted there was never a problem and the change was for no reason. And when you do that one time, it's like your kids, like when you were like, no gum, and then 2 seconds later you give them gum, it's gonna be, I'm not comparing employees to kids, but same thing. So Katelyn, we were talking about that, and I was like, what are your other two options besides never going back to the original?
Your two options? Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
trying to figure out where you're pushing me into.
Okay.
Well, the two options would be
You had said you keep going in that same direction, or let's
stick
find
with
out.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
to stick with it. Or it's okay to pivot. Like, that's the thing, though, is when you're implementing new, whatever it may be, big or small, there might be some reasonable, logical points that they have, or some reasons that they have that this isn't actually better in this one aspect. And so you could pivot and do something different, but you never want to go back to exactly where you were. So you either push forward and stick with it and try it out, or you pivot and go in a different direction and try something different, as long as you never go back to the original way. Because you would have never switched if there wasn't a problem, right? With the original way.
And I think that's big as a owner or a manager, like admitting you're wrong. If you were, if you gave it a true go on whatever path you're going with, and you maybe gave yourself a deadline or your team a deadline of, we're going to go on this path and we're trying this, whatever it is, out for a year or 6 months or whatever it is, and you truly gave it a good all in effort, I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, hey, I gave this our all for 6 months, a year, but guess what? I was wrong. And so now we need to pivot. We need to look at this other direction. We need to turn left instead of turning right. I think that shows your staff a lot too, admitting that you are wrong instead of just forcing them to go down a path that's either making them miserable, not successful for the company, or obviously, combination of both. And there's nothing wrong with pivoting. That's what we need to do. We can't stay tunnel minded, focused in on the wrong thing if we want to grow. I mean, if everybody's content with not growing and just having it be status quo, then that's fine. But I think most everybody is wanting to grow and get better with time. And so, hitting roadblocks and going a different direction is what people need sometimes.
And honestly, pushback is good, because pushback means they care. Like they're thinking about it. They're bought in, and if they push back, they might have a reason.
So Nicole, how I know I've seen all your processes. You're super process oriented. What incentives do you give your managers to hit your goals that you have set out for them, or if they follow through with this goal or process? What would you do? And then right after this, we'll get it wrapped up. So if you guys have any more questions, be thinking of them and post them so we can get them answered. Sarah, I see yours. I'm going to get them in a hot minute.
Are you talking about like financial rewards?
I mean, it could be anything. Like, if you sit down and you're like, hey, we're going to create this, I know you're CBF, so like, we're going to take over this deep cleaning, deep clean specialist role now. Like, I know y'all rolled that out several years ago. So like, how did you get them take this whole new kind of process on deep cleaning process and bring it into all of your team and your management? And how'd you get it implemented? And like, what did motivate it, or not what motivated, but what incentives did you give them in the end? If like, hey, we get this process or this change done, or if you perform your job at these certain KPIs, what do you get? Because sometimes a paycheck just isn't all that much. Like, even if it's a pat on the back or a call a week where you praise them. I mean, or maybe it is a financial, whatever you do.
Well, I definitely think the what's in it for them, is very, very important, and you have to look at it that way. Is what is in it for them? Most definitely. As far as bonuses, I don't know. This may not be popular. I'm not a really big fan of bonuses. I really believe in pay them really well, and keep the bonuses out of it. I know that, it works. It can work both ways. So it doesn't matter. But as far as what I do is, our team is just paid very, very well. I don't really do bonuses, and they aren't motivated, I don't think, by money. Once the money issue is solved, that's just really not what motivates them. And what motivates our team is much more, I think it's more the camaraderie and the collaboration. I think that's what really inspires them and gets them. And so, they're going to be more motivated by getting together for a dinner, or, doing a special trip, like going to Home Goods, and which this is kind of money, but we all love to go to Home Goods, so I'll take them to Home Goods and I'll put them on a little shopping spree. But it's not like cash. It's
Mm-hmm.
more the friendship and the fun and the fellowship of doing something together. And then as far as implementation goes, is a lot of times for us as entrepreneurs and visionaries, we're kind of just exploding all over the place. We've got all these ideas and we're going in and we're like, hey, let's do this. Hey, let's do that. And for a lot of times for our office staff and our managers, they may be a little bit more slower processes. They may take things more slowly. And so if you're just like, throwing up all over them with all of your ideas and the things that you want to do, it's like, whoa, slow down. And so you've got to do things slowly, implement them one thing at a time. And like Kory said, I think you also have to use that we're not going back, we're moving forward. And this is what I want to do. And this is why I want to do it. And this is how it's going to benefit you. And if you've already put all of those deposits in the bank account, you've put the gas in the love tank, they're just going to naturally buy in and accept it and want to be a part of it because they trust you and they trust where you're going and why you're doing it.
And they feel
That's all I
safe.
got. That's all I
Then
got.
they feel safe. No, I
Yeah.
definitely see that, like in middle management, and starting out management, they don't need it. They need a cocoon where they have fun and safe time. I will say the only time that I've found bonuses to be beneficial, because I agree with you, Nicole, same thing. I was like, they could care less. I'm just wasting money. But is it in upper high level managers, when you get to the people who are managing managers, now that they like the bonus because they are competitive and they're having to go like kind of on a whole new level. But I have a question that Sarah's been waiting. So thank you, Sarah. I know Sarah has multiple locations. She's freaking awesome. Bonus program she has for all of her staff, plus extra KPIs that she actually manages on. So will you post those KPIs, Sarah, so I can read them out loud? And then she had a question, and I don't know who wants to answer this, but it said, if you brought a cleaner trainer into a management position, have you ever encountered tech gaps, and how? Like computer, like they don't know how to work the computer, and then what happens when that happens? So she's saying that her people that she sees in the field, because you're in Iowa, right, Sarah? Iowa? Is that Iowa? It is Iowa. Yes. And so the people in the field, when she tries to bring them in the office, she's saying that they're not tech smart. So can you teach that, or do you have to be like, yep, go back down? We need somebody who can have some skills here.
I say they're 100% teachable. If they have the right skills, personality, you can see the potential in them. I think that you could teach them any tech gap. I don't know how complicated you're getting though in the back office, that what they would all need to learn. But I would say having them work closely with a counterpart, either in a separate office. I know we've kind of talked about that, maybe you go to the Munster office and see how they do it there, because although we're one big company, each individual location does things a little bit off. So personally, as a manager and owner, it wouldn't scare me if somebody was like, oh, I've never used a computer, or I don't know how to use a computer, because I think those skills can be taught. You can't teach the empathy, you can teach the management to an extent, but if you already see those qualities in somebody, the tech portion of it, it wouldn't hold me back. And then with TCS, which we just got on, there's an app for it. So you're kind of starting to integrate the cleaners into that techie world, and using a little bit of technology that can help them boost their confidence. So maybe looking into something like that, or also if you see the potential in them when they're a cleaner, I would say start having them like come into the office, or like after their cleaning day, hey, you want to spend an hour with the management staff, like knowing that they're on the progression of potentially getting a promotion, and see how they do it, see how they're doing and how well they can learn and catch on.
Yes, Sarah, don't hate me or share this anywhere, but it sounds like you need a simpler CRM. I know which one you're on, but I love you. Okay, keep going. Moving on.
So I would say it wouldn't hold me back if somebody was not tech savvy and was upfront about it. It wouldn't hold me back from if they had the other qualities.
I feel like with smartphone these days, like, and everything that's going on, I mean, I could see it in like 60 or above, but nowadays we're also on it. You would be surprised. Like, I was completely surprised when I hired a QC person who didn't even speak English, and she's more tech savvy than I am. Like, she taught me things. And I also think that's also another management restriction that people think they have. Just because somebody speaks a different language doesn't mean they can't be a manager. It means you might get to a little creative with your tech tools, but they're actually some of the best people and can relate, especially if you have people speaking their same language. So guys, we are like 110 minutes. It took I knew this is the hardest thing when it comes to running a cleaning service. And I think Nicole said it best. When you jump on, you think, oh, and Katelyn too, I just thought it was just gonna be easy. And then Kory came in from the steel plant. I was just like, boom, it's a lot harder than you think. So managing managers it sounds like all the fluff that we were kind of talking about in the beginning. It was like, oh, you need their buy-in, you need that, and all the things that we just talked about. It sounds really easy, but doing it and staying consistent with it, and keeping that same vision and consistency going throughout the years to be that leader and inspiration to them is what is important. You can't run in there bipolarly and be like, whoa, I got this podcast and we're going to do all these things. And then 3 months later, you're like, don't show up for 3 months, or you're not following through with what you said. I think the biggest thing is accountability to yourself as an owner, that you're paying attention to these cheesy things because you feel like you're not getting anything done, but you are. And that's the hardest part for us to get out of, doing the checklist and getting stuff done every day, and like actually going out there and being a leader every day. Because you can't really like touch what you did that day at all. It'll just be like moments, like Gloria said. Holly knew whatever she said, knew what I could do before I knew I could do it. That's when you get your moments. But sometimes they're 5 and 10 years later, and it's tough. But stay tuned. Okay, so thank you, girls, taking an hour out of your day, even with my technical issues. So it's an hour and 20 minutes out of your day. My Facebook Live connection got broke for some reason. So thank you so much. Y'all can stay on. It'll have to download, but I appreciate everybody tuning in. If you have any more questions, we'll make sure to reply on Facebook even after the live. And again, on Thursday, I have like a detailed workshop that's going to help me stay focused on exactly how to manage managers. And on this Thursday, it's gonna go into the first 2 topics of creating your vision of leadership, finding your people and getting the buy-in and setting that motivation. And then next Thursday, the next hour will be, how do I get processes implemented? What exactly are those breakdowns of strategies? Just a very much more technical process. But you ladies have inspired me. I haven't even written that webinar yet, and now I know what to do. So thank you. All right. Everybody, bye. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.